Live from London, this is BBC News. Japan's Prime Minister confirms that 5 Coast Guard crew have been killed in a collision between 2 planes at Tokyo's Haneda Airport. All 379 passengers and crew escaped the burning Japan Airlines aircraft just after it landed in Tokyo.
I just came here to pick up a friend, and luckily they got off the flight, but they aren't able to get their bags. And it was pretty scary. Like the whole airport kind of just froze.
This is the scene live at Haneda Airport, where emergency services are still trying to extinguish the blaze. Hello, I'm Samantha Simmonds. Welcome to BBC News Now. 3 hours of fast-moving news, interviews and reaction. Well, we start with the news that 5 members of the Japanese Coast Guard have died after their plane was involved in a collision with a Japan Airlines flight that was arriving at Tokyo's Haneda International Airport. And this is the scene there live at the airport there, with that plane still smouldering and flames you can see there coming from certainly one part of the plane. Many fire engines have been there for the past few hours trying to bring that under control, but it is still burning, as you can see. Well, this all happened within the past few hours at Haneda International Airport. The Coast Guard aircraft was departing from the same airport. It was on its way to deliver aid to the earthquake disaster area in Ishikawa. We'll have more on this ongoing situation in a few minutes' time around the world and across the UK. This is BBC News. Let's take a look at some of the stories making news here in the UK. And the Home Office says it's cleared what it's called the legacy backlog of asylum claims, meeting a pledge made by Rishi Sunak. The Home Secretary says the target has been successfully met and the process for future claims has been speeded up. But critics, including Labour, have accused the government of massaging the figures. A man has appeared in court charged with the murder of a 46-year-old man in Sheffield. Chris Marriott, a father of 2, was hit by a car while trying to help a stranger. Hassan Janga, who's 23, was remanded in custody. A target for the number of high-powered electric vehicle charge points near motorways has been missed. That's according to the RAC. The government wanted every motorway service station in England to have at least 6 rapid or ultra-rapid chargers by the end of last year. Data suggests, though, that only 4 in 10 now meet this criteria. You're live with BBC News. Let's return to events in Tokyo now at the Haneda Airport, where there have been this dramatic ongoing incident where an Airbus A350 collided with a small Coast Guard plane. Let's just return to those live pictures from Haneda Airport there in Tokyo, where those rescue crews are still working to bring that fire under control. I'm not sure whether there are any flames still emerging from that destroyed aircraft, in which all 379 people miraculously escaped with their lives after this Japan Airlines struck a Japanese Coast Guard plane in which 5 people died. Stay with us for all the latest. This is BBC News, the headlines. Japan's Prime Minister confirms that 5 Coast Guard crew have been killed in a collision between 2 planes at Tokyo's Haneda Airport. All 379 passengers and crew escaped the burning Japan Airlines aircraft just after it landed. Searching for survivors, Japanese officials say at least 48 people have died and many others are trapped beneath rubble after a powerful earthquake. The UK government says it's fulfilled its promise to eradicate the backlog of outstanding asylum claims by the end of last year. And the skull of a sea monster that was unearthed from the Jurassic Coast goes on display at a museum in Dorset. Let's get more now on our top story. 5 Japanese Coast Guard crew have died after their aircraft collided with a Japan Airlines passenger jet at Tokyo's Haneda Airport, while 1 Coast Guard crewman escaped and nearly 380 people on board the airliner were incredibly safely evacuated. The Airbus A350 jet burst into flames during the accident. Let's just return now to those live pictures at Haneda Airport in Tokyo, where emergency crews are still fighting that blaze which broke out some 4 hours ago now when a A350 passenger plane struck a Japanese Coast Guard crew plane, and then the Japanese Airlines flight was evacuated safely, all 379 passengers unharmed.
BBC News, bringing you different stories from across the UK. For more stories from across the UK, head to the BBC News website.
You're watching BBC News. I just want to update you on a story we've been covering in Spain. This is concerning Spanish World Cup winner Jenny Hermoso. She's been appearing in court giving evidence today about a kiss that was forced on her by disgraced former Spanish football chief Luis Rubiales at the end of the World Cup last year. She has described in court this kiss as at no point being consensual, and that she said she came under pressure to defend his actions. She was testifying before Judge Francisco Tadhg, who's investigating Rubiales on allegations of sexual assault and coercion. She said at the end of her declaration she ratified the statement made at the public prosecutor's office that the kiss was completely unexpected and in no point was consensual. That's according to a source on the AFP news agency. Rebecca Borrell there with that. More on the incredible findings there. It's being displayed at the Etches Collection Museum in the south of England. Just before we go, let's remind you of our breaking story. In the past few hours, we've been covering this story of the passenger plane in Japan, which crashed with a smaller Coast Guard plane and then burst into flames. And we're looking at these incredible pictures of the evacuation of all 379 people on board the burning Japan Airlines plane, evacuated safely according to that airline. You can see them running as quickly as they can away from that aircraft with planes shooting out from the back of it. And we know we've seen from inside the plane as well in the moments after the crash, with 1 passenger filming inside from their seat. Let's just have a look at those. They're filming outside the window with the smoke you can clearly see, and you can just about hear the emergency alarms beeping as well inside the plane. How absolutely terrifying that must have been for all 379 people on board as the smoke begins to fill that cabin, and then the crew have to calmly and safely evacuate all of those on board. Not knowing, you can imagine just how urgent that evacuation needed to be, as very shortly after they were all safely disembarked, the plane did burst into flames. This is the scene live at the airport, still at Haneda Airport in Tokyo, with fire crews there still on site trying to dampen down the smoke and flames. Stay with us for all the latest. Live from London, this is BBC News. Japan's Prime Minister confirms that 5 Coast Guard crew have been killed in a collision between 2 planes at Tokyo's Haneda Airport. Smoke filled the cabin. All 379 passengers and crew managed to escape the burning Japan Airlines aircraft using emergency inflatable slides before it was fully engulfed by flame.
I just came here to pick up a friend, and luckily they got off the flight, but they aren't able to get their bags. And it was pretty scary. Like the whole airport kind of just froze.
This is the scene live at Haneda Airport, where emergency services appear to finally have the blaze under control. Hello, I'm Samantha Simmonds. Welcome to BBC News Now, 3 hours of fast-moving news, interviews and reaction. We start with the news that 5 members of the Japanese Coast Guard have died after their plane was involved in a collision with a Japan Airlines flight that was arriving at Tokyo's Haneda International Airport. The Coast Guard aircraft was departing from the same airport to deliver aid to the earthquake disaster area in Ishikawa. Flames and smoke could be seen pouring from the windows and fuselage of the larger aircraft following the collision. All of its 379 passengers and crew were safely evacuated, as Matt Graveling reports. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News. Let's look at some other stories making the news now. A Chinese foreign exchange student has been found freezing but alive in the US after his parents were extorted out of tens of thousands of dollars in a cyber kidnapping scam. Kai Zhuang was discovered very cold and scared in a tent in rural Utah. He's believed to have isolated himself after being manipulated by the kidnappers. The Hong Kong pro-democracy campaigner and former media tycoon Jimmy Lai has pleaded not guilty to national security charges. Mr. Lai, who also holds British citizenship, faces 2 counts of conspiracy to collude with foreign forces and conspiracy to publish seditious material. There is tight security for the trial. Pope Francis has condemned the recent arrests of Roman Catholic priests and bishops in Nicaragua. The Pope said he was following the situation with concern. At least 14 members of the clergy have been detained in Nicaragua in the past 2 weeks. The motive for the arrests is not clear. You're live with BBC News. Now, as we mentioned, the Coast Guard plane involved in that collision in Tokyo was on a mission to deliver aid supplies following Monday's earthquake in Japan. At least 48 people are now known to have died in the quake. Japan's Prime Minister says rescue teams are facing a race against time to find survivors trapped beneath the rubble. The quake, with a magnitude of 7.6, hit the province of Noto. Our correspondent Jean Mackenzie reports from there, close to the epicentre of the quake. James Cleverly, the Foreign Secretary there. Well, Labour have said that the government is making false claims about hitting the targets and manipulating figures. Just before we go, let's return to the scene at the airport in Tokyo there, Haneda Airport, which we are being told in the past few minutes, according to the Transport Minister, could reopen today. He's just given a news conference confirming details what happened at Tokyo Haneda Airport, saying that Japan Airlines has informed Japan's Civil Aviation Bureau that 379 people, including 367 passengers and 12 crew members, have been safely evacuated. He said regarding the Coast Guard plane, 1 captain was evacuated, but 5 other crew members have been confirmed dead. According to Reuters, the minister says it's hoped Haneda's runway could open by tomorrow or even today. Stay with us here on BBC News. This is BBC News, the headlines. Japan's Prime Minister confirms that 5 Coast Guard crew have been killed in a collision between 2 planes at Tokyo's Haneda Airport. As smoke filled the cabin, all 379 passengers and crew managed to escape the burning Japan Airlines aircraft using the emergency inflatable slides before it was fully engulfed by flames. Searching for survivors, Japanese officials say at least 48 people have died and many others are trapped beneath the rubble after a powerful earthquake. The Israeli government sharply criticises a ruling by the Supreme Court which struck down judicial reforms which had prompted months of mass protests. South Korea's opposition leader is stabbed in the neck at a news conference during a visit to the southern city of Busan. We start with the news that 5 members of the Japanese Coast Guard have died after their plane was involved in a collision with a Japan Airlines flight that was arriving at Tokyo's Haneda International Airport. The Coast Guard aircraft was departing from the same airport to deliver aid to the earthquake disaster area in Ishikawa. These dramatic pictures show flames and smoke pouring from the windows and fuselage of the aircraft as it lands following the collision. It then erupted in flames moments after it came to a stand, still on the runway. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News. You're live with BBC News. At least 48 people are now known to have died in the powerful earthquake in Japan, which struck the centre of the country on New Year's Day. Other people are feared to be trapped in the rubble. The Prime Minister, Fumio Kishida, says the quake has caused numerous casualties and extensive damage. Hundreds of buildings have collapsed or burnt down, many of them in Mojima City. Some roads are blocked, hampering rescue efforts. Mr. Kishida has ordered army personnel to get to the disaster-hit areas by any means possible. Our correspondent Jean Mackenzie is on the ground on the Noto Peninsula and sent us this report. Somebody on board absolutely must have been terrified seeing that smoke lapping the outside of the plane, and then on board as well. But as I say, incredibly, all 379 passengers and crew escaped alive from that plane crash. We'll have you more a little later. Stay with us. Live from London, this is BBC News. Japan's Prime Minister confirms that 5 Coast Guard crew have been killed in a collision between 2 planes at Tokyo's Haneda Airport. As smoke filled the cabin, all 379 passengers and crew managed to escape the burning Japan Airlines aircraft using the emergency inflatable slides before it was fully engulfed by flames.
I just came here to pick up a friend, and luckily they got off the flight, but they aren't able to get their bags. And it was pretty scary. Like the whole airport kind of just froze.
This is the scene live on the runway at Haneda Airport, where emergency services appear to have the blaze under control. Searching for survivors, Japanese officials say at least 48 people have died and many others are trapped beneath rubble after a powerful earthquake struck on New Year's Day. Hello, I'm Samantha Simmonds. Welcome to BBC News Now, 3 hours of fast-moving news, interviews and reaction. We start with the news that 5 members of the Japanese Coast Guard have died after their plane was involved in a collision with a Japan Airlines flight that was arriving at Tokyo's Haneda International Airport. The Coast Guard aircraft was departing from the same airport to deliver aid to the earthquake disaster area in Ishikawa. Flames and smoke could be seen pouring from the windows and fuselage of the larger aircraft following the collision. This is the scene live now on the runway, where the fire does appear to be under control. All of its 379 passengers and crew were safely evacuated, as Matt Graveling reports. Barney Davis, who experienced that earthquake in Kanazawa, around the world and across the UK. This is BBC News. Let's take a look at some other stories making the news here in the UK. The Home Office says it's cleared what it's called the legacy backlog of asylum claims, meeting a pledge made by Rishi Sunak. The Home Secretary says the target has been successfully met and the process for future claims has been speeded up. But critics, including Labour, have accused the government of massaging the figures. A man has appeared in court charged with the murder of a 46-year-old man in Sheffield. Chris Marriott, a father of 2, was hit by a car while trying to help a stranger. Hassan Jangur, who's 23, was remanded in custody. Last year was provisionally the second warmest year in the UK since records began in 1884. That's according to the Met Office. The National Weather Service said the provisional mean temperature of 9.97 degrees Celsius was just behind the figure recorded in 2022, the warmest year on record. Scientists say that climate change is to blame. You're live with BBC News. To Israel now, and the Israeli government has sharply criticised a ruling by the Supreme Court which struck down judicial reforms. It said it was the wrong time for such a decision when Israel is at war and needs unity. The reform sparked months of protests as the legislation limited the court's powers to cancel government decisions. Its opponents said it prevented proper oversight of the government. The court was split in its decision. 8 judges voted in favour of striking down the law, while 7 voted to uphold it. Beautiful restoration there. That's it for the moment. Do stay with us here on BBC News.
Now on BBC News, your daily briefing on business and economics from the world's financial centres. From New Broadcasting House in London, World Business Report.
Red Sea tensions continue to rise. The German shipping line Hapag-Lloyd will continue avoiding the area because of attacks that are disrupting global trade. And battle of the EV giants. Tesla is knocked off the top spot by the rival Chinese maker BYD. Hello and welcome to World Business Report. I'm Tadhg Enright. Well, we start in the Middle East, where the threat of military escalation continues to hang over the Red Sea and disrupt global trade. The German shipping line Hapag-Lloyd has said in the last few hours that it will continue to avoid the area for at least another week. It made this decision after another ship belonging to its rival Maersk was attacked over the weekend. Well, in that attack, Houthi rebels based in Yemen hit the ship with a missile and tried to climb aboard before the US Navy intervened and sank the rebels' 4 boats. In other business today, the US oil giant Chevron says it's writing off as much as $4 billion. Some of it is because of changes to regulations in California that will mean it invests less in that state. The rest is because it thinks it's likely to be found to be responsible for decommissioning some oil production facilities in the Gulf of Mexico. It had previously sold them, but the buyers have now filed for bankruptcy protection. The Chinese internet search giant Baidu has terminated its proposed $3.6 billion acquisition of Joy Group's live streaming business in China. The deal fell through after conditions for its completion had not been fully satisfied, according to Baidu, including obtaining regulatory approvals. The unexpected termination of the deal is seen as more evidence of Beijing's crackdown on blockbuster technology deals. And factory activity in China expanded at a quicker pace in December thanks to stronger gains in output and new orders. This according to the latest PMI survey from Caixin and S&P Global. In contrast with official readings on Sunday that revealed factory activity contracted in December for a 3rd straight month. This comes as China's top leaders pledged to adjust policy at the end of last year to support an economic recovery in 2024, while markets and investors are still waiting for more stimulus measures to be rolled out. Let's have a look at the markets on their first trading day of 2024 here in Europe. This is the latest picture on the main indices. You can see there mostly in the red, although the DAX is pretty much flat as a pancake. Investors looking nervously at what's happening in the Red Sea. There's also new data from the manufacturing sectors of the UK and Eurozone, similar to that PMI data I was referencing earlier, showing a slowdown in factory activity in December. That's it for me. I'll have more business news for you in a couple of hours. Until then, thanks very much for joining us.
Hello, welcome to the BBC Sports Centre. I'm Betty Glover. After nearly a year away from tennis, Rafa Nadal has marked his singles return in style with a very convincing win in the opening round of the Brisbane International. Well, good luck to him. And that's all the sport for now. We'll see you in a bit.
Thanks very much. We'll see you later. Now, the skull of a huge and ferocious sea monster is going on display to the public today in a museum on the south coast of England. It is a pliosaur, and this is an artistic recreation of what it may have looked like. It lived more than 100 million years ago, and its fossil was found in what's known as the Jurassic coast of Dorset. Our science editor Rebecca Morell is at the Etches Collection Museum for us. Well, just before we go, to let you know, we are expecting a news conference from Tokyo in Japan there. This the scene after those two planes collided some 6 hours or so ago, in which 379 people did evacuate that Japan Airlines plane safely. 5, though, crew on a smaller plane did die. Stay with us here at BBC News.
Hello. Storm Henk continues its journey eastwards across the UK.